Hello and welcome to Swing tutorial number 5 from caveofprogramming.com. So this is the 5th tutorial on Swing GUI programming in Java, and in the last tutorial we created this Swing application here, which has got a little panel here with a couple of text fields and an add button, and on the right here there's a text area. And if we look at the mainframe class here you can see the panel that has the text fields and the button, and here's the text area. Now what I want to do in this tutorial is I want to make it so that when I click the button here after filling stuff in here and here, that it adds some text to the text panel here. So in this tutorial we're going to look at event handling and custom events in Swing, because to implement this, what I could do is I could make my details panel call text area methods directly to add stuff to it. But that's a very bad idea, because your Swing program will end up an unmaintainable rat's nest if you do that. So what you should do instead is create custom events, and that's what we're going to look at in this tutorial. So I'm going to go at a brisk pace here, because I need to fit this into 15 minutes, and I'm going to assume that you're very familiar with interfaces and anonymous classes and that sort of thing already. So I'm going to start with my details panel here, and I've got in here this button, and I need to add an action listener to the button so that I can take action when it's clicked. So I'll say add button dot add action listener, and new action listener. I'll implement an anonymous class, and I've got the action perform method here, and when the button's clicked I will just get the name from the name field, namefield.getText, and of course I'm not actually allowed to refer to name field in here because it's a method of an anonymous class, and this is a local variable. So I could either make this an instance variable, or I could just make it final, which is what I'll do, and I'll make this one final too, and now I can refer to it here. And then I'll say string occupation equals occupation field dot get text, and then I'll just form some text from that, equals name plus, let's have a colon, plus occupation, and maybe a new line. And for the moment I'll just do a sysout down here and output that information. So if I run this application now, and I've got to put that semicolon in there as well, then I could say John occupation software trainer and click add, then this information will come out down here. But I want it to come out in that text panel on the left, and what I want is in my main frame here, in the same way that I've added an action listener to the add button here, I want to be able to add a sort of listener to the details panel that can respond to events that happen in the details panel. And so let's imagine that is possible. I would type something like details panel dot, and here I've got add action listener. So here I'd have something like, let's say, add detail listener, and I would add a class that implements the detail listener interface, let's say. So new detail listener here if I'm using an anonymous class, and this detail listener interface would specify some method like action performed. So let's call it public void detail event occurred maybe, and that will accept a detail event which will contain all the information about that event. That's what I want, and I haven't got any of that at the moment, but the first thing to do is implement this detail event. So I'll go to new class and I'll call this detail event. I'll make it extend event object, which is in Java, the Java util package, Java util event object, And this detail event has a constructor, so I'll say public event, which just accepts an object that's the source of the event, and the source of the event in this case would be my details panel. So I'll implement that constructor. The next thing I need is this detail listener interface. So let's create that. I'll go new interface. I'll call this detail listener like that. And this is going to extend, so extends event listener, which is also in Java util. And then go back to my main frame again, and I need to implement this method here. So now I've got my detail listener, I've got my detail event, but I also need to add this to the interface that I've just created. That's very important, of course. So my detail listener interface just specifies one method, which is this detail event occurred, which receives this detail event object. And now I can create a add detail listener object in my details panel. So I'll go down here, and I just copied that text. So I'll say public void add details listener, and that's going to require a detail listener object. And I need to implement this method, of course. And I also want it's good practice if you create an add listener type event to also have a remove method, a sort of remove method as well. And now I need to implement the guts of how this will work. So I'm going to give details panel here, and actually I'll just human eclipse here and add this serial ID that it likes to have, in case you want to serialize your classes. Best just to humor it. So in my details panel, I'm going to have a private event listener list, and I'll call that listener list equals new event listener list. And this is a Java Swing event class for creating lists of events, as you might imagine. So I've got my listener list, and here I just need to say listener list dot add, and the first argument is the class of the thing you want to add, which will be basically your interface detail listener dot class, and then the second thing is the listener, like this. So it's pretty simple. I'll copy that because I also want to use that in here, except that this is not going to be add but remove. And now I need so I can add listeners to this class, and I can remove them, and those methods will add or remove to this list here. But I need some way of firing events. I'm going to add a method here called public void fire detail event, which accepts a detail event event object, and I'm going to firstly get an array from an array of objects, which I'll call listeners, from my listener list. So listener list, and this is sort of the most slightly cumbersome and complex aspect of this, listener list.get listener list, and I need to step through this array of listeners two at a time. So I'm going to go I equals 0, I less than listeners.length, and I'm going to say I plus equals 2. And the reason I want to step through two at a time is because the kind of first of every pair of items here is actually the class of it's actually this class here. So this is going to be I need to check if the class here that I'm dealing with equals the detail listener.class. And if it does, then detail listener, not details listener. And if this class here does match this one here, then I know that I'm dealing with detail listeners, a detail listener. So I can cast the next argument to a detail listener like this. So listeners I plus one. So I need to cast that to a detail listener, which is exactly what it is. And then I can call detail event occurred, and I can pass it this event here. So that's quite nasty. You can find this code, of course, on caveofprogramming.com as usual, and it's worth just, you can kind of copy it and just modify it to your own requirements. And once you've done it a few times, you'll soon get the hang. And now the important bit here is I need to fire those events. So here, I need some way of passing this text information in my detail event. So I could do what I like really, but let's say that the detail event must be constructed with a string text, and let's give this detail event a private string text. And when it's constructed, let's say this.text equals text. And finally, I'll have a method for retrieving that text, which I'll call getText, and I'll return text, private string getText. Okay, so now when I construct my event, I can say fire. Oh, I didn't mean to get rid of that actually. So I need this text. I meant to get rid of this. Here I want to say fire detail event, and I need to construct a new detail event here. Detail event. And the first argument is going to be the source, which is this panel. Second argument is going to be the text. And hey presto. And so now this code will all work here. And when I get the detail event, I can say string text equals event.get text. And I can say, because I've made my text area final here, so that I can refer to it here in an anonymous class. So I can say text area dot append, and I'll append some text, which will be the text that I got from my event here, my detail event. And now if I run this, I can say, okay, my name's John. I teach people software development, software trainer. And if I click add, it's going to appear here in my text area. So that's event handling in Swing apps, and that's basically how you should always connect up your components. You should always have a controller, which is in this case my main frame, that listens to events on objects and tells other objects what to do. So all the events are routed through some kind of central place rather than the objects calling each other in a massive tangled rat's nest. So that's all for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you could follow it. And by all means, take a look at caveofprogramming.com and inspect this code at your leisure. And join me again next time. And until then, happy coding.